All right, so in this video, I'm going to discuss three very critical updates regarding programs. One is regarding a couple of now defunct programs that you need to be aware of. Second is I'm going to do some analysis between the Latin America's few things that I feel very strongly about Latin America versus the Africas. Which one is better? Which one is the plan B in future? Is it Latin America? Is that the future? Is Africa the future? What is the comparison? What are some of the critical things that you need to take into account before choosing either of these options, and how do they stack up against some of the pay for passport schemes out there? Now, before we get started, if you're new to my channel, my name is Jay, and here we discuss investments that lead residencies, citizenships, and a whole lot more. So make sure you are subscribed to my channel so you don't miss out on any of the breaking latest updates regarding any of the programs. All right, so let's jump on the first topic, which is now defunct programs. There are three programs which have disappointed. At least for me, I'm disappointed with all these three programs. The first one is North Macedonia. They came up with this CBI program, almost more than a year ago, where they announced $250K, the price tag. A lot of confusion. What that meant, was that a donation? Was that an investment? It turned out it was. They meant it to be a donation. 200K, 50K was some processing fees, etc. Again, that 50K was for what? Was it for a family, for a single applicant? So a lot of confusion there, right? There were news that they issued some approvals in principles. What has happened to those approvals and principles? Have those people, the successful applicants, have they been able to obtain passports? We don't know, right? So I tried to do some tracking and I wasn't able to track. Maybe they got, maybe they don't, but there's no news out there. No one claims to have received their passports through this program. So a lot of disappointment at that step itself, where if someone invested and if they claim that some few people have got the approval in principle, we wanted to see some real life examples which are currently untraceable, right? So that was a disappointment. Albania recently made it clear that they take a step back. They want to see what happens. They're monitoring how EU deals with the overall industry, right? What happens? So they are on the standby. Again, a disappointment. Albania had made it clear that they would be soon launching a CBI program. Again, a promise not delivered. So some disappointment over there. And then finally, you had Armenia. Armenia was a hot one. A lot of people interested in Armenia. Great country, great people. So very interesting program. The passport itself is not strong at all, but for plan B purposes, it's a very interesting option. Some very unique benefits of an Armenian citizenship, which a lot of people saw. The problem is they said that in the early part of 2023, there would be concrete plans for implementation. Again, it just stopped in its tracks. There's no new update. I don't see any new updates in the next 1 or 2 months, which is sort of a disappointment. We don't know if for sure if this program is going to roll out in 2023. Just the movement, right? The positive movement this year has not been there. So got to be careful and mindful of these factors when you're, either you're waiting for these programs. In case of North Macedonia, if you think that still exists, it's somewhat non-functional now. The new administration has obviously put brakes on it. So no new applications as far as my knowledge is concerned. Again, any of this information is not legal, immigration, tax, or finance advice. This is educational and news content. All right. Second topic is what is the future, right? So these pay for passport schemes are busted to some extent, to a large extent, by Western governments. The EU has cracked down on a lot of the options in Europe. The Western, like the US, has met with the Caribbean. I've covered this extensively. What is the impact of the US's meeting with the Caribbean countries? What are the changes that US was able to bring about? What is all the auditing about? What's going to happen? And all of that coverage. Now, if you have missed any of that, make sure to return and take a look at this video. This talks about the entire impact of the US's pressure on the Caribbean countries. I think it's a good impact. but it's very interesting for someone who is interested in these options. So that aside, right, what is the future? The future is real, strong, solid residencies. And when I say real, it's the real ties with those countries, right? You want to show some ties. You want to have some logical connection to the country. You want to show some logical ties. Those ties can be variable, right? It could be flexible ties so that you get some room to get started and then you can work your strategy properly, right? You don't want something to be so obvious that, okay, paid for this, I've got this is a paid option. So there's a slight difference between outright paid options. They're viewed in a certain way versus natural citizenships or residencies. So the future really is more towards the natural options. Now, what are the natural options? Two of the continents that really shine in this domain. One is the Latin or South Americas. The second is the Africas. Africas has picked up because there are certain good countries in the Africas that do allow dual citizenship. Now that has really impacted this thing in a positive light. A lot of the African countries are now opening their eyes. They're thinking about this. They're thinking about allowing dual citizenship. So the future really is looking bright as far as the Africas is concerned. I personally don't like the Asian options because, again, in Asia, they're very stingy. A lot of countries are quite stingy when it comes to giving you residencies or giving you residencies quite easily, or even citizenships, right? Citizenships is a whole another ball game altogether. It's not only they not only not allow dual citizenship, which is a no-go for a lot of people. A lot of people want multiple passports, but apart from not allowing dual citizenship, even getting the citizenship in the first place, they make it very, very difficult. So that is one strong reason why Asia doesn't appeal as much to me at all, so I wouldn't consider that as an option. I mean, if you want to go travel, have fun, maybe reside for a very short duration, then that's fine. But when you talk about plan B, it's either a solid residency that gives you some protection, or a passport, a citizenship, which is a solid citizenship that gives you some protection, right? And the weakest passport can give you the maximum protection in certain cases. You just have to figure out what works best in your situation. You need to take into account the geopolitics, where you reside, what's the impact, and all of that kind of stuff. Now, if you are interested, you can always reach us. We can have the discussion and figure out what is the best residency or citizenship that fits in your particular circumstances. Link is in the description. But let's continue with the topic. Comparing Africa to Latin Americas. One of the big things, a big negative with the Latin American side is that they all speak Spanish heavily, right? They don't speak much English. In a lot of these countries, you would struggle if you don't know Spanish. So that is a huge disadvantage in my opinion. Yes, you can learn Spanish. Yes, you can learn some functional language so that you can survive in the country, but that's not good enough to flourish, right? You want a solid, strong main language to be English. So that is where I think the Latin Americas is a slight disadvantage for a lot of people. Some people might still be okay with that. Maybe their mother tongue is a Spanish language, maybe that works out, that's okay. But for a majority of the people, that is a hindrance. That is some sort of a big disadvantage, because of which I feel there's that disadvantage with the Latin American options. They're good options. They're very, very bureaucratic for sure. So yes, on paper, it sounds good, 2 years, 3 years, you can get your citizenship. But when it comes to reality, time on the ground, the time that takes to process your citizenship, things are quite different. So when you're counting your years, you need to take into account the processing times, not only to get the permanent residency or the temporary residency, but also the processing times for getting the actual citizenship, right? It could take 2 years to qualify for your citizenship, but it may take 6 years to get your citizenship in reality. So you got to be careful with the countries that you pick for your Plan B passport, right? If you're looking at the Latin Americas. Now, when you talk about English, right? What is low-key, high-quality, something that's climbing up the ladder when it comes to safety, and what is an area which speaks English, right? Which is strong in English, and that is where I think Africa's really shines. The two key options in the Africas I see at this time are South Africa and Mauritius. South Africa is a solid plan B in my opinion. The passport is quite exotic. It's not the strongest passport. The Mauritian passport is much better in terms of the strength when you compare the two head on, but it does have exotic access. It has a clear pathway to citizenship. In 5 years, you can qualify for your citizenship. You can qualify your permanent residency almost immediately. The entry point is very, very low, 6,800 US dollars. I mean, what is 6,800? It's nothing when you're paying that for a permanent residency, right? It's not like the golden visas where you're investing 400, 500K, maybe $1 million in almost worthless properties. In a lot of cases, these developers and marketers will just sell you some BS, some garbage, and you're wasting all your money thinking that you've done a good investment, but then you essentially paid half your money just to get a residency, right? So when you compare all of that with a very good English speaking society, and I'm talking about South Africa as well as Mauritius, both countries have good functional English, so you can obviously not only enter but also utilize your time well in the country because everyone speaks English, a huge advantage. So South Africa can get you started at 6,800. Now if you are interested, you can always reach us and we can get you started. I work with one of the best attorneys in South Africa, very strong attorney who knows exactly what they're doing. So again, if you're looking for a smooth process, then we have that option in South Africa. You do need to have certain net worth requirements, which is very modest when you compare to other countries. So that's South Africa. The second option is Mauritius. Mauritius is a very, very exotic option. A lot of people won't actually full-time, lifetime integrate into Mauritius. It's an island, limited mobility because of the size of the country, but nonetheless, it's a very good, solid option. It has a very exotic passport. Again, something if you're interested in, we can get you started with that. Apart from the 375K in property investment, that is not the only option out there. There are multiple other options. You can do the retirement route, which can get you in for as low as $1,000 US in government fees. There'll be lawyer fees extra, but that's the price point. And then there's the other option, which is the business option, where you're just parking some capital in your business. You don't have to hire people. There's just a few other requirements that you need to meet in order to maintain that business and maintain your residency. That again gets you in for approximately $1,000 US in government fees plus some lawyer charges extra. So that is a very good option. There are some other amazing countries in the Africas like Gambia, Tanzania, multiple options out there, but these two really shine when it comes to Plan B protection. So I feel Africa has a clear edge when it comes to Latin Americas. The only big advantage with Latin America is that the proximity to certain countries, let's say Canadians, Americans, it's close by, so it's easier to go back and forth. But when it comes to long-term option, speaking English, safe, low-key, under the radar, straightforward option, then the Africas also makes a lot of sense. So in my opinion, to summarize, the future is Africa's. Latin is the next best. Latin has been exhausted, right? A lot of people have applied for this. They know this. When you go for citizenship, they know that you've come here for citizenship. So it's sort of, it's not an untapped territory, but Africa's is really opening up to a lot of new options. Africa has significantly opened up to its diaspora around the world, especially Americans and Canadians. They've opened up doors for them. They're allowing them to keep dual citizenship. A lot of these countries, they're opening up programs where they have ways where people who had ancestry descent, they can easily qualify and get the African citizenship. A lot of European countries takes years and years and years, even through descent, even through ancestry, but Africa is making it quite fast and a speedy process for a lot of its expats to come back to Africa and hopefully invest in the Africas. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Make sure you're subbed and catch you in the next one.